Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube art tutorial channel. I'm a professional artist working from my studio in Essex in the UK and painting plein air in the countryside. This week I'm taking you to the Stock Art Group in Essex, where I'm demonstrating a woodland scene. Well, I'm just coming into Stock Village itself, and we're looking at painting a woodland subject, and it's full of light and full of tone as well as colour. I think I know where the village hall, because I'm meeting at the village hall, and I think, if I can remember correctly, we need to turn right here. So yep, down by the Baker's Arms in Common Road. Then we do another right, and I think we're somewhere near the village hall. But of course we've got the Baker's Arms next door, so if all else fails, I'll pop into the Baker's Arms. Right, here we are. Well, here I am. I'm pretty much set up. Everybody's arriving. So I'm raring to go, really. This is the subject we will be looking at today. Lovely little coastal, sorry, not a coastal subject. It's a lovely woodland subject today. I did a coastal one yesterday. And we're looking forward to demonstrating this one. Wish us luck. Okay, well, here we go with the exercise here at Stock Art Group, in their lovely hall that I've got here. And the first thing I'm going to do is to use a large mop brush. Now, this is larger than you probably need, depends on the size of paper you've got. Maybe that one's big enough, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that, even if you're on a small piece, because we need to damp the paper thoroughly. And already I need tissue, which is, if that lays on there too long, that'll pull it back. Right, okay, here we go. Now I'm painting at an angle for obvious reasons, but yours is best at a small angle, 15 degrees, so that the water soaks into the paper and doesn't lay on the surface. That's what we're looking for. Now I'm damping all the way down as far as, you can even come right the way down to there, but don't touch the track area, that lower part. And I'm painting over this side, so dampening that. Now at the moment, I've got plenty of time to talk, but it will get a bit frantic later on, and you'll be saying, what did he say, what did he say? So anyway, but if you do have a problem with anything that I'm doing, just bear in mind I've probably still got the problem myself, so I've got to try and sort it out. But anyway, right, and then I'm finishing here. Now, where I finish, there is like a pinky tint to some undergrowth foliage there. Now that I need to remain white paper, right? And it's spiky. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull that paint, that water, back down to create a spiky area. That can all be done later on, but that maintains white paper. That's what I want to do, ready for a bit of pinky tint. This side, not to worry, and then I'm finishing along that, just into that track and up the other side, just to give a glow to that centre eventually. There we go. So that, you may even be able to see that glow. There, you're lucky here. You can actually see where it's wet. And I would say that if you get any runs at the bottom, like I've got, all you do is just dry the brush a touch and lift them off. Because you don't want it just falling down into the paper, really. Okay, so that's that. Now, that is drying fairly quickly, as was predicted. early on when I spoke to someone. So that's fine. It's nice and warm in here, so you know, it gives you that. There's nothing worse painting a summer scene when it's frozen cold. It's nice to be warm when you're painting a warm scene. So there you go. So that's that. Right. I'm allowing that to soak in. That's what I'm doing. Right. It's got to. If you can see any dry areas, any matte areas, you haven't covered the complete paper. And spread it evenly. That's the key to it. An even wash, because if you get some really damp areas and some really dry areas, you'll get different tones and the water, the paint will lay in areas. Good, right. Now, we will damp the paper as we paint. I'm using alizarin crimson. Very weak. But, I mean, you know, that probably looks a bit strong, but I can assure you it will be almost white when it dries. So do you know what? And I'll say this a lot because I'll be asking you, but in effect, I'll be asking myself. I'm going to go in a little bit darker with that. That's good. Yeah, that's fine. Right, now clean the brush. Right, because we don't want too much of that red in there. Now I'm going to use raw sienna. Okay, raw sienna, that's that dull yellow. That's not the brilliant yellow, that's the dull yellow. And I'm going to put that in. If you, those of you that have got your, I'm going to put that in over there. It's just drying over the top there, so I'm dampening with the raw sienna. There we go. It is drying quick, isn't it? Ooh. Ooh. Oh. It's panicking stations. There we are. Right, raw sienna. That's it looks a brilliant yellow, but it's quite a nice yellow actually. And it really is the start of the trees in the background. So try and paint it up and around that central area there. Right? Raw sienna. You could use any yellow really. Now I'm using cadmium yellow. Right? Because I want a nice glow in that centre. And you can paint up and into that and allow the paint to spread itself. Don't stir on the paper, just stroke it into the area and tend not to rub like that as if you're painting a door. You know, stroke the paint in and lift the brush off, because you'll find that you will get a far better result if you do that. There we go. So a bit more of the yellow right in that centre, lovely. And all the way down, a little bit up the top here too. Well, that's going okay. Well, that's going pretty well. I don't think we can grumble at that. I'm sure you're having a whale of a time out there. Okay. Now I'm going to put Prussian blue. Could use Windsor blue if that's the one you've got. I like Windsor blue, but I'm going to use Prussian blue. Use a small amount of that to start with, because this is where we're introducing a little bit of greenery in the lower area. And in actual fact, I've come over a little bit there, but am I worried? Actually, I am. No, I'm not worried. There you go, look at that. There we are. So this has a little bit of colour of the green in there to start with. There again, don't just do bands of yellow, bands of red and bands of green. Intermix it. It's what we're looking for is the illusion of blurred background. Right, bit more yellow, a little bit more blue for that area there. Yeah, that'll be okay. That's right, I'm talking to myself because when I think it doesn't look right, I have to tell myself it'll be alright. And a little bit, so it's a slightly bluer green. And if you can catch all of this while it's still damp, then you're possibly doing better than I am at the moment. Right. Okay, so it's just those three colours. Now, if it starts to get a little, see where it's starting to dry at the top here, right?
Mine's is green. Mine's is green.
I think the combination of the
Yes, it's the blue and the yellow.
Oh, you've mixed it beforehand.
Yes, yeah. If you can mix it beforehand, and as it goes up, if you get some dry areas, don't worry, just turn them into the tops of the trees. I've just made that up. There we are, look. Just turn it into some, because it's all very light. This is not the foreground trees, this is all the background trees. There we go, look at that.
painting my hands to the brush.
And we're going to go even darker now. So more blue and more yellow to create a darker feel here. Now this is where we go from light through to dark. If you look on your paint, on the photograph, you can see there is a darker blue there. Okay. It's not the finished article, it's everything in the background that we're painting at the moment. So, you know, the finished article really is that bit. You know, these bits, we've got that dark tree coming over there, and we've got things to do to this. Right, now we get to this area where it's a lot of blue in the mix, or a fair amount of blue. Notice I'm painting back now to try and get some spiky edges into that dry paper. See the way I'm using the point of the brush to lift off and paint. Doesn't want to be sort of like too uniform really, so I'm diving in a bit further and then I'm coming out, then I'm going up, and then just a little bit along that bottom edge there. And there we are, we've got the start of the foreground lighter colour.
What two colours have you got for that emerald green?
That one?
Yeah.
That is Prussian blue and cadmium yellow.
Ah.
So, excuse me,
Yep.
which is Prussian blue?
Prussian blue would be that one.
That one, okay.
I'm sure that'd be Prussian blue. Well, now you can blame me. Perfect. That's the one. Yeah. Cool. My eyesight's better than I thought it was. And then I'm just putting a little bit of wheat blue, still in the damp area, just behind that area there. The tree will overhang all of that, but it's always nice just to have a little bit of that tree work there. And you can just pick up a little bit of the bank in the you know, where the trees blend into that distance there. It's always a good way to do it. There we go. And you can come down to the spiky areas here. And you're now picking up the edge of the track. There we go. Now, all I'm going to do now, I'm going to use raw sienna. Clean the brush. Now, I will go over this because obviously you will be a little bit behind my my painting, but but look, there we are. That's my raw sienna, giving me a dull sort of green. I'll have a little bit of blue in there, just to purely give that. See where I've created the track now?
Did you wet that?
No, I allowed the dampness of that to come down into that, okay? And do you know what I'm going to do? No. Well, funny enough, I'm not sure at the moment. I'm just thinking, but I've a good mind to put some red in that. Is that a silly thing to do? Well, I should know. There we go, look at that, look. Because I always like my foreground to reflect what I've done in the sky. So just stroke a bit of red in there. In actual fact, there is a little bit of earthiness in that, so let's put a little bit more of that red. Put a bit of, make it more orangey with a bit of yellow in there. Oh, there you go, look. We've created an earthy colour with the red and the yellow. But that is an optional extra. You know, the sort of thing that, you know, when you go into a car showroom, you either want that one that's a fortune or this one that, you know, just gets you from A to B. So if you really want to be particularly the same as me, then that's pretty much the first stage of the painting. We're going to allow that to dry. Okay, well, the next stage, now that's completely dry, I'm going to paint in this area of middle distant trees, right? Now, I'm going to use a red. Now, do you have, I'll tell you what, most of you have got burnt sienna. Have you not got burnt sienna?
Yes.
Burnt sienna is a staple diet of the artist. Yeah? Right, let's use burnt sienna for this, right? But not immediately. Start off with cadmium yellow and mix in a very small amount of blue. You may need to take some blue, some Prussian blue, from the palette that's already there, because you need only a small amount. So anything in the palette that you have, that's what we're looking for. Right. Bit of Prussian blue, a little cadmium yellow, and then add a little burnt sienna. Be careful with this burnt sienna, because with the good thing about Prussian blue, if you add a brown with it, you still get a green. If you add a brown with ultramarine, you get a grey. If you add a brown with cobalt blue, you get a grey. But with Prussian blue, because it's so vibrant and green, it will always remain green until you add too much of the brown, then the brown will dominate. So, we're looking for a medium to dark tone. No, a medium to light. I think that's what we're looking for. Right, now, this is what I'm going to do with this area. I'm going to paint like that, then I'm going to use the point of the brush just to create the illusion of the odd little, and start off in the clump. Don't start off dotting around high up, because if you blob, here we are, look, here's a typical example. If you push too hard and end up like a blob like that, if it's up there, then you've got to bring it out too high. So start off in that central area with this sort of, it's not a bad, it's sort of like, it's not a brilliant blue, it's not particularly vibrant. And then as you come down, it thickens up a little. So just use the brush to make it a bit more, it's mainly on the outside edge, and don't make it too domed. I've made it quite domed, so I'm going to bring out another couple of areas there. There we go. And it actually, funny enough, I can see it overhanging, so there could be the odd little branch from a tree out of picture overhanging in the top. That would work well for this subject, just into the light. And this could be more bold, because that's more nearer to us. There we go. But either way, there we are. See how we're starting on that edge. Try and work fairly quickly. A bit more yellow now, a bit more blue, and a bit more brown. I don't want the green to be too brilliant this time. So by adding brown to that, you darken, and we use less gaps now. So a bit of brown to it will help. There we go. Because what we've got to do, we've got to be dark enough that when we hit this little area, we're very dark, okay? Because that is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so we're gradually going darker. And to go darker now, it's more brown and more blue. And all of a sudden, you get that lovely sort of earthy sort of green that I think, I use that an awful lot on my woodland scenes. And it begins to come more as just a wash of colour. Well, not a wash, but just bring that up just a little bit there. You can go out a bit with some of these areas because it's nice not to be too. There we are. See the way I've left one or two gaps now, but very little. And when I head down, there'll be no gaps. So now I add more blue, no more water. Don't keep adding water because if you do, you'll end up with a weak colour. Just add more paint. There we go. And also, don't do bands of it. Work a little bit of that dark colour up into the lighter area that you created. See well, and that will blur because it's still damp. Using a large brush, you get this lovely dampness. There we are. See where I'm getting two tones within that. I'll tell you what, this art is good, isn't it? Do you know I'm learning all the time? I might be good one day. Highly unlikely, but if you look at some of the artists there are around today, it's quite remarkable what they achieve, really. Right, now, more blue and brown, no more yellow now. And I'll tell you why, because look, we're getting that lovely dark feel, not as a band, so pull some of that out. Notice I'm pulling some of that dark up into the other area, but as I come down, I'm there again, lifting off. And I'm going to go one tone darker than that. Now, hopefully that'll be right, but I like to go nice and dark because just to prove, you know, that it will dry considerably lighter. I mean, it looks very dark, but I can assure you that give it and we've got some little spiky bits. If you can paint back in like that and allow some of that spiky grasses as well. Oh yes, yeah, leave a bit of the underpainting showing for grasses. There we are. Less as you go along because, there we are. See the way I've created a spiky area to give that, so we're painting the negative, leaving the positive shapes.
Yeah.
None of this messing around with masking fluid. We don't want to do that. Not unless we really need to. Okay. Then I'm going to clean the brush, add a little bit more yellow, and use a very sort of weak mix because I have seen an area there that's considerably lighter, and that just runs out like that. And in actual fact, we could put in some, as you paint further back, make the brush strokes smaller, because that is how it will actually look. You won't get big foliage in the distance. See where I've got big brush strokes there, small as I've gone into the distance. Gives depth. That's perspective. Basically, they call it perspective. Now, the other side, we can also show a bit of bank with a bit of bluey colour. My two little bits and bobs. That's a technical term, bits and bobs. And one or two little tops. I've never painted it like this before. It's surprising, every time you paint, you do it a different, you know, it all turns out different. There we are. Look at that. And I've done a little bit to that side. Don't overwork it. You can always go darker, right? So try not to overwork it. Try and keep it smooth. I understand that it is not an exact science, and you know, every one of you will be different. And that is what I love about watercolour painting. And then just put a little bit around the base. It's very, very weak. Notice I'm very weak there. Not really worried too much, but we will see a little bit of undergrowth there. And that is the next stage. Quite as simple as that, really. Okay, well, I can hear the kettle going, and that spurs me on, because I know there's refreshments coming. And but before we start, I want to paint this bank here, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start in the foreground. Now we've got to be lighter than above, okay? Because if you look on your colour copy, you will see that that area is lighter than that. But then it goes dark again, okay? And because we're in the foreground, we need to use bolder brush strokes now to give the illusion that things are nearer. If I were to use those sort of brush strokes there, it would look flat, right? So everything that you're painting forward now is larger, okay? Right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use alizarin crimson pretty much on its own, because there is some, well, not on its own, watered down, but with no other colour in, okay? Right, yes, I've got that running, lovely. Right, now, make certain that your other colour's dry. If not, just leave some, mine is not completely dry. If you get a bit of running here and there, I'm not too concerned. But I'm pulling in a pinky area, because I can see these little pinky grasses. Well, some people may know what they are in the woodland, but I'll just paint them. I don't know what they are, you know. Whatever they appear to be, then that's what they are, you know. Quite often I get people say, oh, that trailer up the side of that house, that lovely clematis. I said, oh yeah, I'm good at painting clematis. And then another person look and they'll say, it's a lovely rambling rose. Oh, I'm good at painting rambling roses. I don't care, you know, whatever they see in it. Anyway, let's not keep rabbiting too much. Right, now I'm going to use more brown with the Prussian blue to create a little bit of a different green. It's more earthy green, not brown green, but slightly earthy. There we go. See that way? That's slightly different, and I'm painting up into that. Initially it will blend, but we will go back when it's dry. Okay? And that then creates the illusion of sunlit undergrowth. Right? Now I'm not using yellow at all, I'm using more brown, more blue. So it's burnt sienna and Prussian blue. Yeah. Just let us finish this. Just this little area here. Okay. As we work our way down. So there's a bit more blue. There we go. And as you head down into the foreground, if I complete mine, then you can obviously you can biscuit and whatever you're eating, and gradually work your way down. There we go. And I'm going to then, because it's slightly blue, continue with a light wash into the distance. go. And that is another area of cool, distant undergrowth. Now, just to add more brown and more blue to create the darker, earthy colours that I can see in the greenery. A bit more earthy colour. There we are. Doesn't matter if there's a bit of brown going in there. Not too concerned about that. And as it begins to dry, you can bring a little bit up into that too. Notice I've come along the edge of the track. Don't make it too straight. It does need to be sort of higgledy-piggledy, if you like. And that's a technical term, I think. There we go. Lovely. Now I am putting a little bit of yellow with it this time, and a little bit more blue, because I want the colour to be particularly dark, but need a bit of little green. There we go. And fairly bold, a lot of it's going to be dark. There we go. And gradually work up and use the point of the brush into the dry area, that's fine, yeah, into the dry area to create the shafts of undergrowth with the little bits and pieces of that blue coming through. There we go. See the way I've used the point of the brush? I'm using that up there with this dark colour. And some of it probably will be quite dark. But not all of it. And it really is just brown and blue, really. But I'll put a little cadmium in there, but not a great deal. There we go. And that is that next area with that pinky warmth that I think reflects the sky particularly well. Then, more brown, more blue for the very, very dark foreground. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm still thinking, but I will tell you what I'm going to do. Very shortly, I'm going to do something rather silly, which doesn't sound great, does it, really, you know? But anyway, there you go. Right, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clean my brush, like that. Thoroughly clean my brush and pick up a green that I've got in my palette that hasn't quite dried. Ain't quite dry yet. And what I'm going to do, not too much, but I'm just going to drag it across like that and just up the other side, because I want a little bit of green here to show. So I'm dragging the paint from, see the way I'm dragging the paint from the paper in the lower area like that, and using a little bit to go the other side as well. Because if you look on the painting, it is actually quite it's quite grassy. There's a lot of grass involved, and of course, because you're darker as you come forward, you'll get that darker colour. Just drag that down and in. There we go. Look at that. See the way I'm dragging that in and just using the dampness of the brush to sweep across that foreground. Don't try not to completely lose it, but can you see the way I've drawn across the colour to create a light underpainting? That will have shadow on it eventually. Okay. I think that probably does more or less what I'm looking for. We will have adjustments on that later on, but we'll leave it at that for now. Well, there you are. That's the first half. I've been encouraged to have a break. Got a cup of tea And hey ho, a chocolate biscuit. We've got to have a break now. See you in the second half. Okay. Lovely. Good. Okay, well, we are suitably refreshed, and I'm going to now use the second half. I'm going to use the slightly smaller mop again. And I'm going to paint in the greenery. Okay? The very dark green. I'm starting with the very dark green, right? And it's all, it looks pretty black really, but you know, I would never use black Payne's grey. The only time I use Payne's grey is for more thundery sort of skies perhaps, but I'd still add colour to that. But basically, it's very dark green. So, the darkest blue is our Prussian blue, and I am tempted, because you can put any brown or even red with that, I'm going to use a red, right? And that will give us a real rich, warm green, real dark. You could use burnt umber, you could use the burnt sienna, but I'm going to go one stage further to get a real dark, because I do need to have that very dark greenery there, right? So, now, I'm going to use the Prussian blue, and I'm going into an area that's already got a bit of that, so, yeah. So you need a large brush that points, needs to point, because we're going to more sort of, we're not painting each leaf, but what we're doing, we're giving it an impression of leaves, okay? So that's the difference. So Prussian blue, and the red I'm going to use, you haven't got Indian red, have you? No. Have you got anything like cadmium red?
Yeah.
Very, the darkest red you've got in your palette.
Oh, it's because it's cadmium.
So you need plenty of blue and plenty of very little water with this initially.
Sorry, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, I've actually used cadmium red, but if you've got, I'll tell you, and probably the better option would be the light red, that terracotta red. Yeah, yes, or even that one. That'd be more Indian red. So if you do have the Indian red, then please use it. Otherwise, light red, I mean, I've just mixed cadmium red with that, and I'm not sure whether that's quite sufficient, but you need a dull red, really. That's a bit more shadowy colour. So, but the key to it is to get a warm blue, a warm sort of grey, purple. Yeah, not too purple. This is what I say. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, a bit more blue in that, just to give it a green tint. Right. Now, what you need to start with is to create an area. So I'm holding the brush on the paper. See how very dark that is, right? And it is quite dense there. Okay. It's a large area, so don't worry if you feel it's a little bit too sort of heavy, because as you come down, leave some gaps, just watch the way I paint this, and as the brush runs out of paint, see how very dark that is. If you can get something as near as dark, if it's not going dark enough, just add just a touch of raw sienna or something with it. Something just to give it a bit more body. Yes, a bit of raw sienna would help to give it a more green feel. Right, so that's where it's quite dense. And then, as you get to the outside edge, you open up the branches and you use the point of the brush a bit more. See the way I've done that? To create the feeling. So you've got dense areas. And look how really dark. If you can get it really, really dark. I don't want it too blue. That's one thing is not ideal. Then there's a bit of a gap. So there's a bit of a gap there. Where there's a gap, just use the point of the brush to create branches. See, I've left a bit of a gap there. Then I'm going to go down again with the outside edge. Don't go too far over to the left at this stage, okay? Because if you do, you may find that you intrude on the background too much. And give an impression of these overhanging branches. To start with, they can be a little small, but then give them a bit of body to them. There we go, there's a branch that comes out there. Don't want to go too far, no, that's as far as I need to go. You can always go further, but you can't take it off. So I always say, you know, just be a little bit careful how far you go. I'm adding a bit more red to it now, because this will create, with mine, a very warm sort of colour.
Brown.
Yes, brownie, yeah. Anything that gives that impression of sunlight catching leafing. Now, as you head down now, add a little cadmium to it, because that's the darkest you're going to get, right? So, a little cadmium, yellow, with the Prussian blue and the red that you're using. And this should come up just a little more green, a little less. Because as we head down, we need it more green, less light catching. And just watch the way that the branches sort of float around in the lower area. You know, the little, you know, see the way I've dotted and dashed around there using, you know, I can't explain it, but only you will know if it looks right, you think, oh, lovely. But if you do a little area that looks right, don't go over the whole thing, right? You want little areas that are good, but then you need softer areas. So too much of a good thing. So I've used lots of little dots and dashes there, but I'm not going to do that all the way down. There we go. Now I'm adding more yellow, because slowly it's turning green. It's coming out of the light and into out of the feeling of shadow into something that's a little lighter, and we're getting less branches in the lower area too, which is also a bonus, because we can now see some of our trunk work. Now, there will be some branches that cross that trunk, because there's nothing worse than having, I've seen people paint trees and they've put all the leafing on, then they've painted the trunk. Well, all the leafings are at the back. Any leafing that covers the trunk, when we paint the trunk, we leave gaps, and that will bring them together. You'll see what I mean as I go, but I think that pretty much explains it. It's not a great deal that's overlapping, but just want that to be like that. There we go. one or two little, there we go, see where all the dense areas at the top. I've left the odd gap or two here and there because I want that underpainting, that light pinky underpainting to come through to give a film of shadow. Then, what I'm going to do, there is undergrowth now that's standing up around the base of the tree. So my brush strokes are slightly different now because I'm gradually going up with them to create the illusion of grasses and varying pieces of undergrowth really. I'm actually going to put some brown in there and all, so that we've got some little browny patches. Still nice and dark. Okay. And we begin to go darker again with the more browny touches. Can you see where now I'm doing where the trunks will sit onto the or in the foliage? Now I've left one or two little light white patches, but I don't want too many. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my little technique for creating sort of a spiky undergrowth. I actually lay the brush on the side and just pull down like that, or pull up if you like. See the way I'm getting, it's a semi-dry brush, and I'm getting sort of textured areas. Still with that same brush, but I've laid it on the side and I've lifted it up to show the grass is growing up. Now I'm adding more blue and more red because I want to create another layer slightly different. There. Just where there's just a little bit of grasses just coming up. See the way I'm pulling up? Now the brush is running out of paint. I'm pulling up, pulling across like that. I've still got some white paper there. Now, while I have this, I'm going to put some this side and bring that up to just double up on that area there. And that way you introduce a little bit of that undergrowth within the opposite side, and we marry it all up when we paint the shadow. And I'm actually going to use the pointing brush here as well, because there are one or two darker areas that are standing up into that and into the path. You know, I am looking at the painting of the photograph, but I'm also designing my impression of what I see. See the way I'm using that point of the brush again, and I'm just gently teasing that into one or two little areas along the bank on the left, the way that hangs down, just one or two little texture areas. As I go into the distance, I've actually needed to step back because I want that to remain uninteresting. You know, you want to think, you want to feel you can walk into the painting and get that mystical feel in the distance. And that's the key to these paintings. If you can make them feel as if you like to walk into the scene, then you've actually been pretty successful. So that's the leafing and undergrowth. Now it could be at this stage where you feel not really sure that it's going to work, but once we get the trunk in, we get them the right width, we pick up a little bit of that light. I should put more in, there's only two little areas there, but I'm going to elaborate on that, just have a little bit more, because little patches, you know, photograph, people say, oh, well, that's a little light, right? But if that's a watercolour, they get a bit picky. They say, what's that little patch there? What's it, you know? So make certain you tell the viewer what it is. So, here we go. Now, I'm going to use this mop again, because it points. Don't use a weedy little brush. You want a brush that you can sweep up and create the thickness of the trunk almost in one hit. Now, I'm starting off with burnt sienna. Right, so that's the dark brown. I've always got a little bit of that blue on the brush. I'm adding a little bit more, but mainly the dark brown with the burnt sienna with a touch of the blue initially. Okay. Nice to have a bit of warmth, because the thing is with greens, reds are complementary. So if you've got warm browns and reds next to a green, it makes the green look even greener. Mix them together, you get grey, because you've got your three primaries there. You've got a yellow and a blue to make the green, then you put a brown or a red with it, there's your three primaries, that's grey, right? But if you put them next to each other, that's when you get a bit of punch. Now I'm going to do the large tree first, and I'm starting just above where it sits into the greenery, and I'm giving mine just a little bit of, and then I'm going to stop about there. Let's just see, I'm a little bit off centre there, there we go. Right, now where you come back in, paint down into that light area, and you create a spiky area where the grasses stand up into the trunk. Right. Then we go again, and now we pick around. Try and keep the continuation of the trunk, but leave gaps where that branch, where that tree overlaps some of that greenery.
Yeah, blue. I'm not mixed with
Yes? And that starts where you see the greens overhanging the colour. Right, now we go up. I'm going to take the trunk up into an area there. It's going to get lost again, like that. And then it's going to break out here. Make certain where it breaks out, it matches. There's nothing worse than having a trunk that doesn't match. And I need to get behind it to see that that does. Pretty much it does. And it shouldn't be wider than the lower area. So my lower area is a little bit narrow, so let's go a little bit darker than that. You may just see a little bit of it there, but not too much above. Okay? So that's that. Alright? Now, take the blue and the brown in almost, well, not neat paint, but quite dark. And I'm going to paint down the left-hand side, because that's where the shadow is, and under the branch, while it's still damp, and then into, in places, darker as it goes up. So we've got the very dark side on the left, and the slightly lighter side on the right. And then, to create a feeling of light, while it's still damp, I'm using just a small brush to lift away a little bit of that colour. And that will give you a soft feeling of light. Try not to use tissue, because you'll get a blob of white almost. But you need it nice and light there. There we go, that's one area. Shall we have another one? Not too much, but there we go. And that will be slightly less. And all of a sudden, we've got that feeling of light, purely because we've lifted away the colour before it's gone dry. Another little area there where it may just have a glimmer of light just hanging there. There we go. You experiment with that when you paint your trees, and you know, if you get large trunks, you can do a lot with that. You can really go to town with creating that soft shadowy area or sunlit area. Right, now I'm going to paint in. Now I'm going to paint in the other trunk, and I'm going to be slightly different with this. I'm going to be slightly green, less warm. So a bit more blue in this one, because one will dominate, the other one will be slightly secondary. And I think that's a good thing to do. When you've got two trunks together, if they're both the same, it's too much of a good thing. And now I'm finishing, and I'm using the same technique. This one's a little more narrow, so it could be a different variety of tree. And you will notice that if you get that right, another bit of the trunk going up there. There we go. Good. And may as well have a little bit of that, just showing some light perhaps. Not going to be quite as dark with this one. I'm not using that real dark tone, but I'm lifting off just where that area is there. There we go. Just sweep it across, just so you can see. Just a little bit of lifting off of the colour. There we go. And I've done about three areas on the right, but on the left, I'm only going to do one, because it's so easy to do three areas, both sides, and there again, too much of a good thing. And once you have the trunk working, all you do now is to pick up some really dark paint, again, those two colours, burnt sienna with Prussian blue. Make it brown if you can, but if it comes out slightly green, it's not a problem. And be careful where you put these, but I'm going to bring one out from, you can actually bring, if you watch this, you can bring a branch out from, say a branch came out there, it would break out into the open there, like that. And then you may see it again up there. And that may have a small branch running away. See the way I've created a branch within the green area that presumably heads from there. Then of course you have another branch possibly there, branch coming up there. Don't want to do too much of this, but I just want to show you the smaller branches that you quite often get from the lower area. Notice how I've come small branch from the lower area there. And because that's the one in the front, that is going to go across that and support. See where it's supporting the branches? See where that one is supporting? Now I can go a little bit wider with that, because you know it's gone so far, it does need to be a little bit wider. There you go. But it's up to you whether you put them, but what I would say is don't put too many in, because if you do, you end up spoiling the whole thing. And I think that's enough for me. So that's the way you do this type of tree. Okay, well it's more or less the final stage. So I've mixed a quite a nice sort of purpley blue, more blue really, not too dark, okay. And where do we put it? Well, we need it in the foreground definitely, and it's beginning to dry, and you will notice that if you stand talking too long, that I'm rather prone to do. It dries in the palette. There we go. Right. Now, we want a little bit, you should see some of that white coming through. So you'll get little sparkles of that. As it dries, you'll see where the green and where the white areas are. And that creates an illusion of shadowed undergrowth, really. And also, if we down that trunk a little bit to the left of that trunk, and a little bit down that trunk and a little bit to the left of that trunk, because that's casting a shadow onto the undergrowth. And it's not just a straight line, would be if that was grasses, if that was just a mown lawn, and it comes back down like that and almost combines really to create a secondary larger shadow. And now you can create some little grasses that are actually standing up in shadow. You can do what you like now. It's really fun. I love this shadow work, Lark. It's one of those things that, you know, if you get it right, it can be absolutely superb. But if you get it wrong, well, turn over and start again, basically. But it's all about learning, you know. Unless you give it a go, how can you learn? Unless you give it a go. Now, as you come down into the lower area, use the point, and then, look, side of the brush, drag across the paper. See where I've got the start of that foreground shadow? And it comes up the bank the other side. Now, it looks overlaid, but it will dry. I can assure you it will dry. It won't be quite as dense as that. And then we can go over some little parts of that pink area. There we go, look at that. How I'm creating dappled light onto that pink area. Right? See the way I've created dappled light onto that pinky area. And then, because the brush has run out of paint, we may have another little area somewhere here that's just creating the illusion of shadow. Now, need to be a little weaker now. Don't get too excited, because if you do, you end up, just soften that just a little bit. There you go. And then you can create another little patch, just there. Just one or two little touches there. And I quite often use my finger just to sort of soften it back a touch and to create a feeling of depth. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then, of course, we can have the odd little area just coming up in the background there and create a feeling of where the bank meets the grasses. See where I've done that? Just to create the feeling of where the bank meets the grasses. Let's give that feeling of depth. And for those of you that need a bit of this colour, I'm actually going to put some of it onto there. Just dapple it on. Don't paint too much, so that you're laying this colour onto the colour you already have. You're not blending on the paper. Be very careful, because it's a technique that overlaying, it's not so bad if you've got rag paper, but if you've got this sort of paper, you need just to be a little careful. And, tell you what, I don't think we're far out. I'm just going to put a little bit of red now within some of these areas. See where I'm pulling red up? Alizarin, bit of alizarin there, stroking across a bit of alizarin. But I want that, and a little bit of alizarin here. These are sort of finishing touches that may or may not suit your work, but that's the sort of thing I would do to create that illusion of shadow. There you go. Allow that to completely dry, because you never know what you've got until it completely dries. Okay, well that is pretty much the finish of the painting. Now, if ever you do tape it like this, always tear away from the picture, because if you don't, you'll end up with tearing the paper, unless you let it go completely dry. So you end up like that. You will probably only get the benefit of yours when you go home and put a mount over the top, because it really is the mount or this process that really gives it an edge. And as I say to everyone, always sign your work, okay? Because one day you never know exactly who will want a particular painting of yours. And I'm just going to use red, and I'm going to sign it where it's not too visible. I'm going to sign it here. And it's just straightforward Steve these days. There you are. That is tree in landscape, woodland setting, pretty much complete. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the afternoon, and we may see you all again sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly you can. Well, there you have it. We have finished the course. Everyone is just cleaning up now. Their work is really good, actually. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, colinsteedartist on YouTube. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Thank you for watching.